Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. We have another great night planned for you. We have the great Roderick Shaw, who is going to take us inside of cocaine addiction and tell you about the 7 times he went to prison and how he got himself together and got his life back together and got a great job after that. To encourage you, to let you know that there is life after prison, there's life after cocaine addiction. To you mothers of young kids who are watching, and maybe to some of the young kids who are also watching. And we'll always talk about aspects of the criminal justice system along the way tonight. I also have my dynamic co-host, Mr. Rodolfo Rudy Cantu. He is here tonight, and he will also be asking some of the questions and sharing his experiences as a criminal defense lawyer with the audience tonight. So feel free to listen to Mr. Roderick's story and give him about 15 or 20 minutes, and then call in with your comments and words of encouragement. So Roderick, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. We really appreciate it. I'm sorry I stood you up last Wednesday. I was in a federal hearing until exactly 6:30, so there was no way I could disappear like Bewitched and get here at 6:30, get here on time, so we had to cancel. But thank you so much for agreeing to come back and take us inside cocaine addiction. This is a very serious topic, and I know it takes a lot of courage to tell your story and to share with people. And you know, we put the shows on YouTube, and we try to share with young people about, so they won't make the mistakes that we've made.
True.
And so they can understand more about the criminal justice system. It doesn't just stop for you. It doesn't move fast for you.
It's true.
It moves extremely slow because there's so many people in it. And just share with us your experiences so we can learn. So you tell me that you're from Houston and from the Sunnyside area. Take us to the beginning and tell us how you were raised and what influenced you to choose to get involved with cocaine when you had the choice not to.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for having me. And I also like to thank you for giving me a platform to champion my cause against drug addiction. Okay. I was the oldest boy raised in Sunnyside, Texas, from a single parent. I grew up in the 60s, you know, and never having a father at the house, I think, was kind of, you know, instrumental in me kind of, you know, stepping out, you know, and with curiosity, I say. And, but, you know, I also have to thank my mother, because my mother did a fine job with me, you know. It's just, you know, I made some choices that I had to live with, you know. But, you know, growing up in Sunnyside as a kid, I had everything I ever wanted. You know, if you told me I was poor, I wouldn't believe that, even though I might have was, but not in spirit. So
our mothers had a way of making us feel rich, even though we weren't. Wasn't that the beauty of it?
That's right, that's right. And so, and I remember, you know, going through school, and, you know, in school, my mother always, you know, laid the law down. You know, we had to have good grades, you know, and I was very smart, I could say intellectual, you know. I always maintained an A and B average during school, you know. So I was pretty good student, you know. And what happened, I went to Addicts Junior High School, played football, played basketball, and I remember the year 77, I want to say, they come out with magnet school, or 76, they come out with Houston Magnet School, and my home school was Worthing High School, which is down the street. But by me having, like I said, a good grade point average, I was able to go to Sterling, which had a magnet school program, and aviation and navigation. We flew airplanes and stuff like that, you know. So I was, you know, like I say, very intelligent. But I remember, you know, we're talking about the drug use, though. So I remember as a child, I think in the 5th grade, I experimented with marijuana, you know. And today, you know, my heart aches when I hear they legalizing marijuana in certain many places, but that's a different story. We'll get to that later. But anyway, I think I had my first experiment with marijuana about in the 5th grade. me and 2 or 3 more guys I hung with, we used to tell our parents we was at Boy Scout meeting, you know. After school was out, we used to go to an old church building, matter of fact, called the Association in Sunnyside. It was vacant at that time, and we used to go in there after school and we, smoke all their marijuana, and I'll never forget the time I went home and Mama was saying, boy, what's wrong with you? She looked, marijuana make your eyes red and you're always laughing, and I was just laughing and giggling, and she told me to go outside and screw the water hose on something. I was so high I couldn't do it, and and I was laughing, and I remember her hitting me across my head, and Mama had a mean right hand. But after that experiment, and I went on to junior high school, and one thing I do know is that when I experimented with marijuana, it gave me some courage. I skipped school. I wouldn't have did that, I don't think, if I wasn't smoking marijuana. I remember skipping school, for the first time, and, I guess I got bold, but my grades stayed pretty good, and I went on to high school and played basketball, and all that good stuff. And it wasn't until after continuing to smoke it, I think in my 11th grade year over there at the magnet school program, my grades dropped. And after you go up under, I think, a 70, which at that time was a 70 to 80 was a C. And my grades began to drop. And so if you don't maintain your grade average, you have to go, they'll kick you out, in other words. And that's what happened. They kicked me out of magnet school. So I had to go back to my home school, which was Worthing. Reed Road Crunch Bunch. But anyway, I remember, going to school, going toward Worthing. I put it that way. I went toward Worthing for about 2 years. And I remember one morning at this time, not only has the marijuana began to take over, I began, drinking beer. We call it Old English. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about.
Those 40 ounces?
Yeah, the 40-ounce
Okay.
Old English with the charcoal filter in it back then.
Whoa.
They removed that. It was something about that. But anyway, I was drinking that at that time, and Mama used to wake me up every morning for school. Roderick, get your butt up and get ready to go to school. So one morning, I think I stayed out too late that night because I used to climb through the window to get back in the house. But I remember her waking me up, and I had this terrible hangover. And I said, Mama, I got honest. I said, Mama, don't wake me up no more. I don't be going to school no how. And man, what I say that for? She said, boy, every day you get up, you better be going look for a job or do something. So what transpired out of that is that I ended up talking with some Army recruiters, and they enlisted me in the Houston Night School program, and I went over there, and I supposed to finish high school in 1980, but because of the 2 years I was just faking it, I ended up finishing in 1982 at Houston Night High School on the Milby campus. That's where the school was.
Okay.
And I remember at that time, I still had my grade point average, and I think when we graduated, that Houston Night High School class graduated, the superintendent of HISD was Billy Reagan. And Billy Reagan remembered me from all the trouble I used to get in at the other schools. And it was fitting that at Houston Night High School, they let me accept a trophy on behalf of the first Night High School graduating class or something like that. But anyway, from that graduation, I went to the Army, and I think at that time my mother and everybody was really just pushing me off to the Army because they seen the road that I was headed down. And they didn't know that I was taking Roderick with me, though. When I got there, I remember I went straight to Germany, I did basic training in Lawton, Oklahoma for like 6 to 12 weeks. And then from there, my first assignment was Germany. And I never forget it when I got there, Vivian. It was like I was in a place that, it was like, to me, it was like it was hell, but it was white snow everywhere, and it was dark, and it just kept on snowing and snowing and snowing. And, you know, and I could feel that, you know, I was finna embark on something different in my life, you know, and little did I know when I got there, the first day I got there and I went into my room, they had lost all my luggage, you know. We had this big old green duffel bag which you have all your stuff in, and they lost all my clothes. So I had to walk around the facilities with my dress green Army uniform on. I'm talking about the dress up one, you know, you have one that's dress up. And I had to walk around there for about 2 weeks with it. But I'd never forget the first day I walked in, you know, and the devil really know how to do it. When I walked in there, them guys were sitting in there and they were smoking hashy.
Oh my God.
Hashy in the
In the
room.
barracks.
In the barracks. My first day there. And I knocked on the door. They said, come on in. They said, where you from? I said, Houston. They said, come on in, Big Tex. And do you want to do this and have some of this? And, you know, and rightly I fit in. You know,
Of course.
I said, Lord, have
Of
mercy.
course.
Yeah, he know how to hook it up. And, you know,
Had you ever smoked hashish before?
well, I remember we in the neighborhood thought we were smoking hashish, but it really wasn't the hashish that come from Germany. You know, it was like stuff we made, you know, and tried to put together to simulate hashish.
I forgot what hashish is.
Hashish is it's a marijuana, but it's a what they call it, I don't know the
Does it give
technical
you
terms.
hallucinations?
Well, yes, it can, but hash is more of it's more addictive. It's a powerful.
Does it look green like marijuana?
No,
it's brown, isn't it?
It's brown.
I remember it
And
from the
it's like-
70s. I just can't place it exactly what it is.
And it's like brown clay, dirt.
It's like dirt, and you still roll it up in those little cigarettes, right?
Yeah,
the little
you
papers.
can. You can.
Or put it in a pipe.
You can put it on top of your marijuana, or you can. But I'm gonna show you how we did it in the service. What we did, we used to catch the Bornhof. I'm in Germany. I learned a little German while Sprachen Sie Dutch while I was there. We used to catch the train and go to Frankfurt, Germany. That's where we'll go and like on the weekends when our military duties is over, we were free to, you know, do our own thing. And we used to catch the train and go to Frankfurt and buy the hash and come back, you know, with it. But it's like a round, hard, brown substance. And what you do, you'll get a cigarette lighter and you would heat it up. And when you heat it up, it becomes real soft. Then you can kind of, you know, sprinkle it, yeah. And what we
That
used
sounds
to,
like black tar heroin.
yeah, that's how.
I mean, because black tar heroin is gooey and black.
That's
sticky.
sort of like what it was. And we used to take a soda water can and take the little pin off our rank on our shoulder and make little holes and make a little carburetor out of it. And we'll melt it down and put it on there and suck through the can part, and you'll get high like that. And that's what we did, you know. And what happened is the hashish was so powerful and addictive to where it became that I had to have it every day.
Wow.
You know, and early in the morning, one thing I know about the Army is true. They say we do more work than most people do all day at 5 a.m., you know, and we had to get up and run and do all that. And, you know, and I couldn't run. I couldn't function unless I had it, you know. And so from that, you know, the alcohol, beer, and, you know, the beer is so strong. And, like, you can drink beer over there, and it's like 20% alcohol in the beer, you know. And we used to have Oktoberfest where you go and you drink out this boot and you'll drink, and in some way, if you don't drink out the boot right at the waist on, you have to go buy the next round. But this is basically where my addiction really just took forth. Yeah, in the Army, you know. And I used to have so many fights. I fighting MPs, police officers. I got so many, if anybody know what I'm talking about, Article 15, UCMJ's Uniform Code of Military Justice, you know. And I got a lot of them, and I remember I think I went to about a sergeant in rank, a E4, and before I left, I didn't have nothing on my collar. They stripped me down, you know. But I remember being restricted to the barracks, you know, and I had to do KP, do extra duty and all that. But then in the evening time, late at night, when the CQ, which is charge of quarters, would go to sleep, in Germany we had the barracks was the big story things, and they had the stairs going on the outside with the big windows where you can just walk through. And I'm on extra duty and don't supposed to be nowhere. I wait till everybody go to sleep, and I climb out the window and go downtown, and I get drunk and be fighting. So one night I had did this, and
Who are you fighting? The Germans?
yeah,
Just fighting.
just fighting. Well, basically it was like the Army against the Marines. You know?
Okay.
We'd be in the NCO clubs, and we get to drinking, and they be, representing their turf, and we want to represent ours, and that's how it would all start. But anyway, I would do that, and this particular time I got real loaded, and I was fighting, and the MPs, all of them just surrounded me, and they hog-tied me and hauled me off to jail and called the first sergeant. First sergeant say, he's on restriction. What is he doing? And there you go. And so
There you go.
I had to deal with that element, One thing
Did you have to go to jail in the military?
I went to what they call a stockade.
Stockade, right. That's what they used to call it.
Call it stockade, yeah. And we used to have to do certain little, sir, yes, sir, and all that kind of good stuff, and do push-ups when you mess up and stuff like that. But, the addiction really took forth. And I remember the last, me and 3 more privates, we had went to Frankfurt and bought a bunch of hash this time. And I remember a guy, we had this like little brotherhood, we called it, and we all stuck together. And one day, a guy that Williams K, who was the guy that went and bought all the hash this time, and it's another guy named Williams out of Chicago. We was all close-knit brotherhood. But anyway, a guy came and asked me, because I kind of knew where everything was, you know what I'm saying? I knew, And so I was downtown in Baumholder, Germany at that time, and I had a little girlfriend coming in from London, England to spend time with me, And so I was down there with her, and I'll never forget William K. asked Big Shaw, where the stuff at? I said, go down there to Alpha Battery, William K. got something, Not knowing that in the Army, they play on a different level. The Army has what they call, you can become one of us. You have to snitch somebody out and you can stay in the Army, you know what I'm saying? So that's what they did. Well, anyway, the guy that asked me was the snitch for the people,
For the Army.
Yeah, and so I directed him to William K. And when he got there, I took him with me. So both of us went. That's how this happened. Both of us went. And so I introduced him to William K. And then when he got there, he said he wanted 20 pieces of hashish.
That's too
right
much.
then, yeah,
That's
right
too
then
much.
it spooked me, That's too much,
That's
man.
too much, yeah.
Because you little GI, we ain't gonna buy no more than 1 or 2,
Right.
And at that time it was $20, so that's $200 worth of drugs. So and William K., I guess wanted the money, sold it to him, right? And so I say about 2 or 3 weeks later, secret indictment came down, and they had Private Shaw, everybody who was present was an aider and abettor and a drug dealer, sold such drugs to certain officers, such as 100 hours and such. So at first, our plan, we all got together, we gonna deny it, So we held on. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. Then after a while, they started talking about Mannheim's federal prison and all this.
Where was
shit.
that?
That's the prison you go to in Germany.
Oh, yeah, y'all wasn't trying to do
in the
that.
States, it's Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. So, but yeah, they started, sharing that with us. So I told them, man, I didn't sell no drugs, and I was just there, So with that, yeah, we know you was there. You was an aider and abettor. And in the military, by you being an aider and abettor, we can prosecute you on that, So I said, okay. And then after just going through it backwards and forward, they came to me instead of trying to rehabilitate us, they had their way of dealing with it, and they said, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you a Chapter 11 or something like that. And it's not dishonorable, but it's other than honorable conditions, and for the good of the service, we're going to let you discharge. So I said, well, cool, you know, I want to get out of there. I ain't, you know, give me my money and let me go back. I called my mama. My boy, come home. You know, mama love us babies, you know. Forget that army, come home, come home. So I came home. When I got home, look what was staring me in the face.
What year was
Cocaine.
that?
This is 85.
Okay.
84, 85. Cocaine was there. And I met with my cousin. He was a big drug dealer in Sunnyside. And I remember, you know, I said, man,
Now,
what is...
85, was it cocaine freebasing? Or was
It was
it,
freebasing.
it's freebasing then, right?
Freebasing then, ether base, yeah.
Taking the powder and cooking it with ether.
Yeah, and it was more of a powerful, it was real powerful back then. And I remember coming home and first couple of weeks, oh yeah, I'm gonna try to go get me a job and do all the right things, you know. And what happened was that I ran into my cousin and he said, man, this is what's happening. At this time, he had quite big money at that time, you know. And so he was, you know, showing me the ropes. And I will never forget it, man. We was in the village over there one day and he gave me this cocaine and and I seen some women smoking the cocaine, and they started doing some things. I said, "Whoa, what is that?" You know? And so,
were they doing some sexy things?
yeah,
or what?
they
Oh
was
my
doing some
God.
things that was, you know, it wasn't right for TV, you know. And so I said, man, what does that stuff make them people act like that? You know, curiosity again, you know. And I remember taking a little hit, you know. Matter of fact, one of the girls said, why don't you try a little bit? You know, the devil, he sure know how to fix it up. And I tried it, and from that point on, I was hooked, you know. And I remember, you know, just, you know, stealing from my mother, you know, that was pain, you know, it was a lot of pain, man, you know. You know, lying and, you know, it was just, you know, I did anything to get some drugs, you know. And you know, Einstein said real good, you know, doing the same thing, expecting different results, and that's what happened, you know. I did so many things. I remember the first case I had, the first prison case I got is we robbed this man, right? Me and 3 more cats. I got away, you know, but they brought the police to me, you know, so
That's what's gonna
I
happen if
remember
they
I
get
got a
caught. Everybody gets
probation.
caught.
But that was my first offense, and I got a probation. At that time, it was Judge Ted Poe. He
Ted
went
Poe
on to
gave
be
you a
a
probation.
senator.
Yeah, congressman, I think.
Yeah, congressman.
But he
Yeah.
got you. He let you have probation on an aggravated robbery.
Aggravated robbery
Wow.
but the and then I had the probation to wear adjudication. If you act right, you get off your record. I don't think I last 3 months. So I went back in front of him. He said, I'm tired of getting 5 years. I took the 5 years, went to prison. And then when I went to prison, you know, back in the 80s, you know, I remember the first day in prison. Man, I go out there in the day room, and it got nighttime, and a guy hit me on the shoulder. We sit in this long, low bench looking at TV, and the guy nudged me on the shoulder, huh, man? And I said, what that is? He said, some drink. I took it and drank. We drinking wine in the penitentiary. Man, I'm drinking the wine.
You
know,
drinking wine in the penitentiary?
We drinking
What
wine in
penitentiary were you
prison.
in?
This is prison in Darrington.
Darrington unit.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we sitting there, we drinking wine, and next thing I know, he nudged me again. What is? Passed me a square. I hit the square. I said, man, this the
Cigarettes or marijuana?
marijuana. He said, this the. After I hit the square, I said, man, this the penitentiary. I couldn't believe it, you know. Oh man, I started liking it, you know.
And you didn't have to pay for
I
that?
didn't have to pay for it. Or
Why
nothing.
not? He liked you?
No, it wasn't that. It's just, you know, you know, you get your home. I met some of my homeboys there.
From Sunnyside?
Yeah, from Sunnyside, and we look out for one another in prison. So, you know, I was, you know, when I got there, I already had some people that, you know,
That you knew.
hooked me up. Yeah, and so I said, man, this the prison? You know, I kind of liked it, that, you know. But anyway, make a long story short, I think on the 5 years, I think I did 18 months. My first time I did 18 months in
Do you remember what
prison.
year that was?
It was probably the end of 85, somewhere up in there. I did 18 months and, you know, got out, you know, only to return again, because when I got out, nothing changed. So if nothing changed, nothing changed. So I went back to
Did you
Sunnyside.
go back from, okay, went back to Sunnyside. And how did you
Back
go
to
to the second prison
Sunnyside.
sentence? Was it from robbery again or was it for selling
Nah,
drugs?
for drugs.
Okay, well, tell us how that
Okay.
came about.
The second one, at this time, the city under siege, and you know, cocaine was real. You know, on the news and everything. It was city under siege and everything. So at this time, it was plentiful, and we would, you know, take turns selling it. You know, we had like lunch bags full of rocks. You know, at this time, cocaine, the bags was like $50 and $25. See, now in the streets, you can go get a piece of crack for $2 and stuff like that. But back then, it was $50 and $25.
And this was powder.
Now, there was crack.
Oh, it was crack, but it cost more.
Yeah, it cost more. It was still like the ether-based crack.
Yeah.
It was real, you know.
Real crack.
And so at this time, we had like 4, 5 people would be selling, and we would take turns. You know, you rotate. When the car comes, it's your time. Next, my turn. You know, and that's how we did it. And so I remember one time, I think we were selling, and the law come and you throw it away, but the law still say he seen you throw it, and by you not having really no money to buy you or afford a real attorney, they would just give you the case. You know what I'm saying? You couldn't suppress the evidence. You know. Anyway, I kept going in and out to prison. You know. And
For selling rocks.
for selling, but some then the last after selling, I became much of a user. You know, I'd be using drugs, and the law would come. I wouldn't even throw it away because I want to keep my drugs. You know, and I would put it in my tongue, under my tongue. I swallow it or whatever. But I
Let me ask you
remember.
this. When you swallow cocaine, does that still make you high, or does your body just absorb it?
Well,
does it give you any kind
it'll
of
give
physical-
you diarrhea. It'll give you diarrhea.
So it makes you sick.
Yeah, it'll make you sick. You'll start.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll make you.
So you gotta
And
smoke
if
it
you
to get the
swallow
high.
too much of it, it will kill you. I had a good friend of mine named Robert, and rest in peace. He's not here. He swallowed a bunch of cocaine running from the police, and he died.
Wow. Yeah. Did he die when they called him, or when he got to the hospital, or what?
I think when he got to the hospital, they tried to pump him, but they couldn't save him. But anyway, you know, as I began to, you know, after selling, you know, I'd never forget one time I was up on the corner, and at this time, you know, I had sold a lot of drugs, and people knew me. They gave me all kind of nicknames: Too Tall, Tree Top, you know, all kind of nicknames we have out there on the street.
And you are tall. How tall are you?
I'm 6'6".
Okay.
You know, and I go back on the same corner every time I get out of prison and cell though.
Yeah.
Lawman knew me by
6'6",
name. I
yeah.
never forget the law. Engelhard, Roderick, what you doing? Come here. You know, I walk up to the car. Oh, I ain't doing nothing. Got dope on me and everything.
Everywhere. Dope everywhere.
Yeah, but anyway, you know, I kept doing that. But this last time, I remember that, you know, I was my best customer, you know. So I remember a guy from New York that came down, and at this time, they said it had to be the 92 or 93 season. That's the year Libet, the 94 season. I think that was my last time out in the street because the Rockets had went to the champ, that 94 and 95 team. And I'll never forget, I was up on the corner, and a guy from New York had came down, and I was at like a sportsman bar. They used to all the big players hung up there. Vernon Maxwell and all them was up there one day, and we was hoorahing Maxwell. I never forget. And what made me remember this story because he just came back to Houston, you know, under that 94, 95 team, and we was hoorahing him and all that. And this guy from New York named Half a Paint, I know that was his nickname, Half a Paint, and he was asking people, who is Treetop, man, you know. And so I was listening, you know, a roundabout way, you know, and somebody pointed them to me, you know, and he said, man, I got this Colombian dope come from New York, man, and I heard that, you know, that you can move it for me, you know. here I am, you know.
No,
Can't
Lord.
turn it down.
Can't turn it
Can't
down.
turn it down.
No,
you
it
know.
sound like a rap.
Yeah.
Sound like a game. Sound
But
like a game.
no, it wasn't that game.
It wasn't that game. Okay.
I was the game, you know. So I accepted this dope, man. This guy give me a big old cookie of this
So he's
dope
selling it or giving it to you to sell?
to sell,
Okay.
you know.
So do you
And
buy it
then-
on consignment?
Hold
or?
on, hold
Okay.
on.
Okay.
And so he asked me, he said, do you smoke? I said, yeah. Then he said, all right, split half and gave this for you. You know? And so anyway, I said, that ain't never happened before, you know. But anyway,
unless you're the police.
yeah, but after this, after we talked and, you know, made arrangement how we was gonna do it, I left, you know, and as soon as I got back, you know, on the cuts where I be at, and I got to smoking this cocaine, you know, and it was way different from what we had down here in Houston, you know, and I liked it so much to where the first night I started selling it, people from all over had heard about Rod J got this good dope, and they was coming from everywhere. People I had never seen before, you know, and it was scaring me, you know what I'm saying? And so I was paranoid, you know, because people, you know, I usually just sell to people that I knew.
Right.
But they had heard about this dope that was over here in Sunnyside, and so they were just coming from everywhere, you know. And so I think I sold all the way to about 12 o'clock that night, and I said, I ain't finna sell no more. Anyway, I closed shop. And what I did was that I had like $700, and I went somewhere else and bought some more dope and kept his dope for my personal use.
Of course. Oh, my God.
And so, all right, at the end of the night, I seen this young lady that I really liked it. And, you know, she was in the streets. And anyway, we, you know, got together, you know, and I remember at this time, Vivian, I had sold dope and been up so long, I had stayed up like 7 days smoking crack cocaine.
Oh, my God.
And the thing
Now,
about
you stayed up 7 days with her, or when you got to her, you were at the 7 days?
When I got to her, I was at the 7th day.
Oh, my God.
And
so you were no good?
It wasn't no good. And what happened was that, you know, we went and purchased a room, you know how that go. But anyway, I'm being gut level honest.
Yeah.
And so when we got there, she, you know, she kept on wanting to smoke, you know, and we smoked and smoked till finally, you know, I guess she could look in my eyes and tell that, you know, I was really about to pass out, you know. Like I said, I hadn't been to sleep in 7 days, and I was scared to go to sleep because I thought I was going to die.
Oh, yeah, I know you were.
And so only thing I remember, I say by 7 or I say by 11 o'clock was checkout time. And the only thing I remember laying in that bed, phone was ringing, time to check out, you know. And I looked over there, all the dope was gone.
And she was too.
All the money was gone. And what was left, like I had sold a lot of dope. It was like on a shiffer robe, I had like $50 in change up there. And,
right.
You know, and I just remember running up there and just scooping all that up, putting it in my pockets, running around the corner. And on the corner, I seen my cousin. I said, you seen such? He said, yeah, man, I seen she got a bunch of money and a bunch of drugs. I said, that's mine. Oh, my God. Here I go. I got just $50 with change.
You about to go whoop her.
All I got is $50 that change, and you know, and this man come looking for his money today, and I don't got nothing.
Lord.
And all I got is $50. So what I do, I go with the $50, try to go score some more drugs, and smoking the drugs that I had went score because it was the odds was so insurmountable that ain't no way I could make up that man's money. So I smoked all that up. And I was walking down the street, and this black Mercedes-Benz drove on the side of me. And my first intuition was to run.
Right.
But I said, if I run, they're going to shoot me down like a dog. So what happened was that they opened it. He had 2 guys in the back and 2 in the front. And the 2 guys in the back jumped out the car, and I got in the middle, and he hit me with an AK-47, bust my nose, and all that good stuff. Took me on what they call a gangster ride, and I remember.
So it bust you in the head and threw you in the car.
Yeah, and taking me down there somewhere off a telephone, and really just beating me, you know, and
Did you try to fight him back, or you just had to take that whooping?
I just covered up, you know.
Just covered up
best I could, you know, and after, you know, they started beating me so bad, you know, people start, you know, created a crowd, you know, and somehow I stumbled up on Telephone Street in front of the cars, and I was bleeding. I never forget it. But I never passed out. I remember I had a white T-shirt on, and I remember when I looked down, it was just full of blood, and it scared. It woke me up, you know. And I remember a guy said, "Man, get in the truck, and I jumped on the back of his truck, and he took me to Reed Road and Scott, and I remember managing to walk home and going through the backyard, and as soon as I get around the corner, my mother and all her friends all out there, she said, "Boy," she hollered, "My son, what happened, what happened?" I walked to the yard and put the water thing over my head, and they took me in the house and got the blood to stop and all that. And my nose was about this big, looked like I had a fight with George Foreman, you know. I remember laying up in the bed, and I'm gonna show you how crazy and how cunning and baffling this drug is. I was laying up in the bed because my mother and them had got it to stop bleeding. I think they had some compression towels on my face. And as I was laying down, I felt in my pocket, Vivian.
A couple of rocks.
And I felt a couple of rocks. Lo and behold, I stepped on the back porch.
And you got to
and I lit it, and I hit that door. I put my hat on and put my old 357 in my side and went right back up on the corner.
Yeah, that dope is cold. Insanity.
Yeah.
That dope is insanity.
And so by this time, I'm right on the corner where the sportsman is and where half a pint, the guy who I messed up the drug money. I remember seeing him, and I showed him that I was holding too, you know. And funny thing about that, he passed back by and he said, "Man, I got plenty of drugs. You just missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime to make money. But I just couldn't let you punk me in front of my people. But we all good, just like that." I say, "All right,
so
we
he had
gotta
to
be
whoop,
good."
He had to whoop behind. He had to whip your ass, huh?
Yeah, that's what he said. That's what he said. He had to whoop. But, you know.
So he was from New York, but he moved here.
No, he was still from New York. He was here during the playoffs. It was during the Rockets and the Knicks.
Oh,
that
he
was,
just brought Doug with him, okay.
Yeah, and they was down there partying, yeah. And so, you know, and I did that 7 times in and out of prison, you know. I remember getting out of prison on a Friday. I'm going to kind of speed it up here because I remember getting out on a Friday, and that Sunday I had a new case going back to prison, 48 hours. I never forget it.
How did that happen? Now tell us about the 48-hour turnaround.
The 48-hour turnaround. Well, I got out, like I said, and back then, when I got out, I didn't never go home. I got off the 80 in Sunnyside. That was the bus then, 80 in Sunnyside. And when I got out in Sunnyside, my friends was on the corner. Instead of me going home, I went up on the corner. And, you know, at this time, I'm looking like Hercules. You know, I done got straightened my health back. I look good, you know.
Right.
So I'm there to impress. And my boy, he seen me. He said, "Man, come on, man. I'm glad you home." You know, I jumped in. I'm finna show you my new spots, man. And he had a brand new Cadillac Brougham, the long one with those pretty wheels on it. And so you had the girls in the back, so I'm down. You know, I go riding with him. Okay, and we riding through Sunnyside and drinking wine and smoking primos, they call it at that time.
What is that?
Primos as lacing cocaine on top of weed. They call it primos. You can lace it on top of a cigarette. They can do it with tobacco too. And so we were smoking primos, and you know, like I said, I just got out of prison. I'm high and paranoid and tripping, and so we riding through the neighborhood, and all of a sudden there was a car. At least this what our mind was telling us. The car was following us, you know. So we'll speed up, and it seemed like the car turned, you know, figment of our imagination. But anyway, we got to a point back in Sunnyside, over here off of Southview, and the guy, the drug dealer who picked me up, he was paranoid, so he said, "Huh, man, that's for you." You know, gave me a whole cookie of dough. Here I am, just getting out of prison, don't know what to do, but I know where the drug house is.
Ooh, you know how to get to the dope.
So what I did, I went straight to the drug house, and I'm gonna give the drugs to the lady and let her sell it, tell her just pay me half. So while I'm in there, this is Sunday, while I'm in there, somebody knock on the door. And I don't want to break nobody's anonymity, but she said, "Go answer the door, baby. You ain't been gone that long, Roderick." So there I go answer the door. And he said his name Kenny. He said his name Kenny. And so he come in, And then he said, where's that? And I pointed and told him to go down there and talk to that lady there. And so as he's talking to her, she had already had some drugs from before I got there. And she's a drug addict herself, but she's selling it, right? And so she get a little matchbox and she show him they were like little, you ever seen BBs, what they put in them little daisy guns? That's about how little the drug, because she been peaching off of and getting high, you know? So she said, this all I got, baby, I got 2 left. And he give her $40, you know, and you little drug addict, you know, that I know of, dope fiends like I know, they're gonna say, can I get some more or put a little bit with it, you know? They ain't just gonna buy it and go, you know?
Right.
So the guy bought it and go. I say, and I asked her, I said, did you know him? Oh, I think I know him, baby. 5 minutes, I'm finna get out of there. 5 minutes later, laws everywhere, baby. Man, the people handcuffed me to a barbecue pit out there. So, yeah, I'm finna go back to prison.
6'6". Tied up to a barbecue.
Yeah, mine smoking like an old broke stove. I'm out there, man, I'm handcuffed to a barbecue.
You hadn't even seen your mama
I ain't even seen mama yet. She wrote me and said, boy, you need your butt whooped. You know, and this here time, I remember going, and I was, after, you know, dealing with the judicial system, you know, I kind of knew my way around in the courtroom, you know. And I like to say, you know, it was my smarts. What happened was, when I got busted that day, the next day I went to court. You know, they took you right on to court. So what I did, I gave an alias name, all right? I gave the alias name. I knew my neighbors, I know his whole birthday, his height and everything. Me and him were about the same height. And I just used his name and knew his birthday and everything. So I did an alias name. Never found out. So here it is. I go to court.
This was the 90s.
This is the 90s when they had the revolving door.
The revolving door, because that's before they had the fingerprint machine.
They had the fingerprint machine.
And you still got a
by the grace of God, I got through there.
Well, they said that's not 100%.
And check it out. And so what happened was, I gave alias name and everything, and I copped for 2 years. At that time, I had just got out. I had the 15-year sentence before that. But what happened was, when I copped up under the alias name, they gave me 2 or 3 years. Anyway, I did 60 or 90 days, and I got right back out, right back out on Scott Street. And this time I found what I was running for. What I was running from, I found myself running to, you know, and there was some help.
Some help.
You know, I found a place called the Free at Last Club, which I had a support. But anyway, I want to go back to where I was talking about when I had used the alias name, and he was my next door neighbor. His mother and my mother are real tight, you know, and so what happened was the mailman in the neighborhood knew the Shaws and knew the Singletons, and you know, and so what happened was, when I got out, I still had the parole up under Roderick Shaw, but I had this new parole under the alias name, and the mailman brought the alias. He took the alias parole to the real
right,
people,
to the neighbor, to the real patient.
Yeah, and she called and said, "My son ain't never been in no prison. And at that time he was in the Navy." And so, she found out, and she kind of said, "I bet you that's that Roderick J boy down there." And slow behold, the parole officer came for Roderick J Shaw, and he said, "Man, tell me something. Why do I got a picture of you with this name on it and Roderick Shaw?"
Picture of you.
Yeah. I said, "Man, look here, I had to do what I had to do, you know." And he said, "Well, the good thing about it, they can't do nothing about it because my prior conviction with the 15 years ate up to 2 years, so they couldn't do nothing but run it concurrent." Right. So here I am, I'm cocky, you know, I done beat the state of Texas, you know, I'm propping me up, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, Lord,
you know, and
beat my
you know,
butt,
the words say there is a way that seemeth right to a man, you know, so I'm thinking I was all that in a bag of chips, but the long story short, you know, is that I got out that time, and, you know,
did he send you back, though, when you had these two aliases? So you stayed out on parole?
The 15 years was more than the 2 years I had got.
But he didn't violate you for picking up a new case?
No, he didn't violate me.
Because you picked up a new case?
Yeah, I did.
And you were gone for 2 months doing it, so you didn't report?
No.
parole during that
But
time.
at that time, by the grace of God, I say I made it. But the last time, and that was the winding down period for me, you know.
How old are you now when this is happening?
At this time, I had to be 33.
Okay.
About 33.
You got to be about tired now.
Yeah. And so, and what it did, it had made a conflict between my mother and her best friend, you know, and they wasn't speaking, you know, and like I said, I had found a power by which I can live my life by. When I left Sunnyside, it was a place where I used to score my drugs from, but somehow now it was a recovery center. It was a 12-step program was there. It was called the Free at Last Club.
So that place you went there was an abandoned church? Is that the same place or is it a different place?
No, that's not.
Okay, so how did you happen to get to Free at Last, Cocaine Anonymous? How'd you get there?
What happened was that when I got out, when you get out of it, I need to go back. I need to go back one more. I was getting out of prison that last time, and I was at the walls in Huntsville where you get released at. And I'd never forget, when I was getting out, the guard said, call out everybody named that was getting out that day. And my name was amongst them. And we was getting ready to go, and he said, who is Shaw? I said, that's me. He said, come back. You got to sign some more paperwork because you getting out on what they call intensive supervision. You know, I said, what? He said, yeah, you got to wear this monitor, you know. Ooh. And here I go, you know, me. I said, man, you know that old prison talk. Man, I ain't finna wear that. You can send me back to prison. God say, shut up. Put that monitor on. You gonna wear that monitor, you know. And I'll never forget that, hearing that small voice, you know. And so I went back and put the monitor on. And when I got out, I had what they call a voice pager monitor, where every hour on the hour, I had to call in and I had to repeat some numbers. It was a machine. It'd say 11, and I had to say 11, 12, it'd say 12, and I had to say 12. And after I go through a series of numbers and it catch my voice, then it say you clear to go. And that's what happened. So when I got out, but I got a job working for a contractor through the city of Houston at this time. I knew some friends, so they got me on now. We pick up paper on the side of the road. It was a small paying job, you know, $3.60 an hour. I never forget it.
But it was a job.
But God said, if you be faithful with the fruit, he'll bless you with more, you know, and that would happen for me. And I had a supervisor at that time, a church-going guy, man, and God kind of, you know, just ordered my steps. And it's at the beginning of me cleaning up. And I worked at that job for like 7 years.
Really? Cleaning up paper, picking up paper.
And I became a supervisor.
How did you find the discipline to do that when you cracked out of your mind on, you know, with every description you've given us? So, I mean, what was the revelation?
Well,
I mean, you're on the monitor.
I want to change.
You want to change.
I want to change. That's right. And see, a lot of people want their significant loved ones to change, but it won't happen until they want it, you know. They told me that if I wanted something I never had, I had to do something I never done, you know, and that's what happened for me. And I remember, you know, like I said, I had a voice page monitor, I had every hour on hour. And at this time, I started going to meetings because I didn't want to do no more dope. I had a desire that, you know, I wanted to change, and I didn't want to live like I had been living because, you know, in the program, it tells us to do an inventory of your life.
So just let me make sure I understand. How did you make yourself go to the 12-step AA program? How did you do that?
Because I was intensive supervision.
So you had to go.
Yeah.
And you picked one that had some good mentors for you. What's that, the Free at Last?
Free at Last Club. That was Free at Last Club was the first Black Cocaine Anonymous group in Houston, Texas.
And where did it meet? Was it in Sunnyside? I thought it was in Fifth Ward. It's in Sunnyside. Is it still there in Sunnyside?
Yes, it moved on to another location, but it's still in the Sunnyside area. So what happened is I got there, you know, and like I said, what was the icing on the cake is that the building, when I got home, that was the building I used to stick my money through the hole and get dope from.
So that was
what God meant for evil, mean, what the devil meant for evil, God turned around and sent it for my good. Because when I got home, it was the Free at Last Club. And I had some guys that, you know, had already been to prison and had already, you know, was there when I got there. And they kind of took me on their shoulder, you know. And we started an awesome men's group with a good friend of mine named Cedric. He was in it. You know, a bunch of us cab, and it's a lot of men. And we still today stay in contact. We had a men's group that met every Wednesdays, you know. But to make the long story short is when
What year was that, if you remember?
This year was probably 97, 98. Okay. When I got out, 97, 98. Because last prison was 1994. I did 3 years in prison. So when I got out, I had 3 years already sober. You know, 97, I had 3 years.
So you wasn't doing cocaine in prison that time.
No,
so cocaine is over. They wasn't having it in jail no more. In prison.
No, they didn't. A whole lot of stuff had changed in prison. You know, back then you could smoke and all that. When I first went to prison, they used to give you cigarettes.
Right, you could smoke cigarettes.
Yeah,
right.
But all that had started to change. And see, God knew what I needed, because at the last time I went to prison, you know, I used to always go down to Alameda, down there to Darrington or Ramsey, somewhere close where I had visit. You know, people come see me. But the last time I went to a prison in Tulia, Texas, in Amarillo.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, and for me, that's where the change took place, because it wasn't, you know, and at that time, I can say I was, you know, anti-black. You know, I was, you know, as, you know, we had you know, I didn't hang with, you know, I had a little prejudice working with me. You know, I would hang with the brothers, you know. But God.
Once you got up there, it wasn't that many brothers
when
there.
I got up there, you know, it wasn't no blacks on staff. And in the other prison you go to, they had some black folks, you know, but it was all white. And I met a chaplain named Chaplain Gene Raw. And this white man, he was tall. He was about my height, but he was frail looking. But he used to follow me around that prison yard. And that, you know, when I went to prison, I just had some 21-inch arms. I was a big old guy, you know. And he used to walk around and he said, "You're going to be a mighty worker for God one day." And
so he just kept haunting you, telling you you're going to be God, you're going to be for God.
Yeah,
he was just like putting it in, he was mind, he was brainwashing
He spoke it into existence. He spoke it into existence. You're going to be a mighty worker for God one day. I said, "What?" And I said, "Chaplain, you scared me, I go down there to the weight room, put everything on the bench press and push it all up, because I was just, you know." And what happened was, every time I went to prison, though, see, the last time I went to this place I call Amarillo, Texas, you know, and my people, my mother and them wouldn't send me no money because they tired of me, you know. So I had to hustle in prison, you know. I sold stuff, ran the numbers on footballs and stuff like that. And I remember one day I was running a football pod, it was Super Bowl, and I had went to church that day. So I didn't know what the number was or nothing. But at this time, I was what they call, I ran the tank, you know, because I was so big, you know, and we slept in a Bay Area about the side with 50 inmates in it, you know, and the guys that didn't have money, they had lockers. I had money in all them lockers, you know. I had money like 50, 100-some envelopes, 100-some coffee, 100 them soups and chips, and I was just running there. I had a remote control to the TV. So
that means you was taking it from them?
No, I just ran the tank, you know, and
You're
I just stacked up.
You're not going to explain that to us.
No, I didn't take it from them. We, you know, 3 for 1. If you didn't have nothing when you got in, it was ways you hustle in prison.
Okay.
You know, you need some envelopes, so I'm gonna give you 1. When you make commissary, you got to give me 3 back.
Gotcha.
You know, it was stuff like that, you know, and so I just accumulated. I had all the money on the tank, and so I began to dab in church, you know, and I began to go to the 12-step meetings in prison, you know, and I never forget. One day I was down the hall hustling, going to pick up my money. The count bell rung, and I had to go off into an AA meeting, and I went into the AA meeting, and I heard a guy. As soon as I get there, a guy was sharing my story. You know, he said, "Man, every time I get out of prison, I go back on the same corner, get to doing the same thing." But I remember getting out of prison, going to AA meetings. I stayed out there for 10 years, then I stopped going to meetings, and here I am again. And I heard that registered right there.
You received it.
Yeah, I received that. And so I remember like the Super Bowl game, and I didn't know what the score or anything was. I had went to church that night, and there was guys that knew me from Darrington and the other prisons I had been to down south. They come up there and said, "Man, Big Shaw went crazy. He down there preaching, you know." But, you know, that was a compliment from where I come from. But anyway, I went back to the tank and I just gave all that stuff away. I said, hey man, who didn't have nothing, y'all come get some of this here. You know, I started stepping out on faith that God was gonna take care of me, because this man was speaking life into my membranes at that time, this chaplain. He was telling me, you're gonna be a mighty worker for God. And I started believing that. So I started going to church, I started opening up to prayer, and you know, and everything just started happening for me, you know. And I'll never forget when I got out. Well, I remember the first time I come up for parole, because at that time you come up every year. I came up, and I had been down, I was the only inmate, and that was like a new farm. It was like a transit center. Really, you just go through there to go to different other places. But somehow they kept me there. You know, I was what you call a trustee, where I can go in and out, because all my cases was just, you know, drug stuff. Right. So I really wasn't no criminal.
Right.
You know, when I took an inventory of my life, if I'd never got high off of drugs or alcohol, I'd never went to jail. Because I ain't never gotten a police car sober. Never. Every time I got in the police car, I was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So that let me know right there. But anyway, while I was there, I had came up for parole, and like I said, I had started going to church. I had started doing some spiritual stuff, you know, and they denied me that first time, you know. And I remember going back to the tank, and this little white fella was teasing me. He said, "What happened, Reb? They ain't send you home?" And you know, and I couldn't hold it. I turned around and I hit the guy and broke his nose. Blood went everywhere. We cleaned it up, you know. And when I went to sleep that night, I had a small voice from heaven say, "That's why I ain't send you home. You ain't ready."
Ooh.
And look here, I was working, remember I told you I started working the 12-step program at that time, and I was on step 8 where they talk about making amends, and I ain't never in my life hugged a white man. And I had to go find that white boy, and I told him I love him, man, and he accepted my apology. And the next 2 years was the best 2 years of my life in prison.
You're not going to believe this, but you've been talking 1 hour. We have 1 minute left. No breaks, no commercials, fantastic story, and we got 1 minute left, so make it good.
Well, first of all, I like to tell to a person that's right now using drugs and you don't think that you can make it out, you never have to use again. There's hope after dope. I want to tell any parent that has a child or any teenager that is listening now, you never have to go to prison, because I've been enough for you. Also, I want to thank some people. I want to thank my pastor, A.C. James Jefferson Jr., proud pastor of the Crossway Fellowship of Believers, Pentecostal Missionary Baptist Church, 8310 Southview. That's where we have an awesome recovery ministry. This is what I do. I've been clean 20 years by the grace of God. And also, April the 10th, we will be celebrating our 7th anniversary of this ministry. It's called the Crossway. We have a dynamite speaker coming from Lakewood Church. We'll have food, fun, and fellowship April the 10th on Southview and Rosemont, Sunnyside area of town. I want to thank my beautiful wife. She's a co-coordinator with me at the Crossway Recovery Ministry. If it wasn't for her, I couldn't do all what I do. I want to thank the Free at Last Club for believing in me when I got out in 1997. And I just want to thank all of the people that have supported me throughout the years. I want to thank Sister Vivian King. I want to thank this brother. He didn't get a chance to
Rudy
ask.
can too.
Rudy can too. They really didn't get a chance to ask.
Because your story is so
questions.
good. We're being so wrap up. So we're going to have to invite him back so we can do part 2 of his story so we can go more into it. Thank you, Rudy, for coming. I didn't know the story was going to be so dynamic.
I didn't get to ask one question. Thank you for being here.
I want to
Mr.
thank
Shaw.
y'all for having me.
Appreciate it.
Like I said, I do want to come back and do the second half, the Crossway.
The Crossway
to tell
half.
what it's like now.
All right.
Right.
All right. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try